Today I'm talking with Darren McCrea. Darren's found a lot of help using psilocybin to manage his Parkinson symptoms. But on top of that, Darren is bringing awareness to the fact that the rising levels of CO2 in our atmosphere are severely damaging our plants and trees. He's a great man. He's got a great cause. Hope you enjoy the conversation. All right, so welcome back to our show. Today, I'm very excited to talk with this man. Darren McCrea was introduced to me by a friend, Leo Russell, that I had on the podcast a couple weeks ago. Darren is a very interesting human being. He's the founder of Cannabis, which is a medical marijuana dispensary in Spokane, Washington. Darren's a member of the Colville Confederated Tribes, as well as Darren has found a lot of help managing his Parkinson's symptoms by using plant medicines like cannabis and psilocybin. So Darren, dude, thank you so much for being here, brother. I'm really, really excited to talk to you about all the knowledge that you have to share today. Thank you for being here, man.
Yeah, I'm real happy to be here.
Yeah. Well, so Leo, I had Leo on a couple weeks ago, and we were talking about plant medicines and the work that she's been doing with the ADAPT programs and the Entheo Society to help to raise awareness about psilocybin and help to decriminalize a lot of those plant medicines. And immediately she started talking about you, and she sent me a couple of YouTube videos of yourself, going on video before having any plant medicines, and showing the effect of the tremors that you have, and then eating plant medicines, which was psilocybin, and within 20-ish minutes, your tremors have really subsided to a point to where they seemed manageable for you.
Correct.
How did plant medicines enter into your idea of utilizing those for the symptoms for Parkinson's?
For Parkinson's, my breathing stopped completely. Still haven't been able to figure the reason. In December of 2014, I was able to calm myself and start breathing again. I went to the emergency and they gave me a round of steroids. I was down to the last 2 or 3 in the pack, and my breathing stopped again for the second time. I went back and again, I couldn't take a breath. I couldn't make a sound. No, nothing. I was by myself both times. I just had to clear my mind and relax. And eventually I started breathing again. They went to emergency. They gave me a second round of steroids.
Yeah.
I was down to the last 2 or 3 in the pack, and my breathing was about ready to stop again for the third time. It hadn't gotten any better. It was still really, really, really bad. It was New Year's Eve at my dispensary, and I brought the guy, and that was 2015 New Year's. And I brought the guys that worked for me some psychedelic mushrooms for New Year's, and I ate some. And about 25 minutes after, I took one of the biggest breaths I've ever taken. It wasn't like slowly it got better. It was like a light switch, like somebody blowing into a balloon.
Wow.
It helped me breathe all night. I woke up the next morning and I couldn't breathe again. And so I ate another 3 grams.
Okay.
And it helped me to breathe again. But that's when I noticed that it stops my tremors. My tremors were to the point where my wife fed me every 6 months. For 6 months, every meal. And then before that, at least 1 or 2 meals, I bet, for years. It just got progressively worse. I had tremors when I was young, and my health started to deteriorate. I started having grand mal seizures in about 2006, I guess. In 2003, when I opened up Cannabis, I was standing. My feet were starting to hurt for a couple of days, and then my middle finger on my left hand stuck down for 6 weeks.
Oh,
Within 3 months, I couldn't lift my left arm over my shoulder. I couldn't lift the toilet seat with one hand. Within 3 months, I couldn't walk. And so I went to the doctor, discovered I have rheumatoid arthritis.
mm-hmm.
They gave me methotrexate, which stabilizes your immune system,
Okay.
prednisone, anti-inflammatory, and painkillers.
Okay.
I started to get strung out by the painkillers, so I looked for alternatives and saw that cannabis replaced methotrexate as an immune stabilizer. And once I was able to accomplish that, I didn't need the painkillers anymore.
Wow.
But again, so that's a couple things that I have that are messing with me. And one day when I first started really noticing my Parkinson's is getting bad was around 2014, 2013, when I sold my dispenser, my retail license, because I just couldn't work anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And I was driving down this hill, and it kind of felt weird. My eyes were kind of feeling weird a little bit. I didn't think much of it. I got down to the stoplight, and it was a 4-lane going through Spokane. Uh, 2 bars coming across with one stoplight on each one.
Mm-hmm.
And I looked up there, and instead of only being 2, there were 4 stoplights. And I kind of tilted my head a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
and one of those stoplights spun at a 90-degree angle going straight with the road.
Wow.
I wasn't too far from my club, so I went to the next light, still doing the same thing. Nothing moved like that, but everything was doubled. And so I limped into my club. And after that, I didn't drive much. That next day, my wife drove me down, and we was driving, and there was a woman on the sidewalk walking, and she split into 2 women so far apart you could put another woman in between them.
Wow.
And that's happened. That went on for a long time.
Mm.
And I fell down in a parking lot one time in Portland because my eyes were doing that.
Oh, wow.
And I didn't just have the side, like if I was looking at a stoplight, instead of having one red dot, there would be split. There would be 2. Dark time, when it's night, usually is when I notice that with the stoplight. But they were always side by side. They were also on top of each other. One time, the last time I drove, which has been several years ago, probably 5 years ago
Mm-hmm.
or better, I was going up the interstate, and I took a side road that brought me over the freeway and dumped me out onto another road out there. And I went over that overpass, and instead of turning right and following the road down, I went straight off that hill.
Oh.
And probably 150 or better yards to the bottom, there was an on-ramp coming up. In the middle of that, I went through those trees and went off that hill. My back tires just barely caught on that on-ramp.
Uh-huh.
And I went all the way down to the bottom and turned my vehicle, jumped out, hooked my air intake back up, and went on down the road. I didn't have any adrenaline at all.
Wow.
So I knew there was something wrong there. So I quit driving.
Wow.
Then it's still hard not to drive, um, but I do it.
Yeah.
Um, I'm from out on the res, so I was probably driving when I was 10 years old.
Right. Yeah. Second nature to you.
And exactly. In my school and the store was about 17, 18 miles from my house.
Hmm.
So anywhere you had to go out there, you had to drive. So it is very difficult.
Yeah. Wow. Well, Darren, do you mind if back to the dosage that you were taking for to help with Parkinson's. So 3 grams, just to put it in clarification for people that might not know dosage for psilocybin, 3 grams is a decent amount of mushrooms to activate the psychedelic side of it. There's microdosing where that's a really small dosage where you're not getting the psychedelic effects, but with 3 grams or more, really with 1 gram or more, you're really starting to feel those psychedelic effects. So were you feeling any of the psychedelics from the psilocybin that you were taking when it was 3 grams, or was it just bringing you up to the level of managing the Parkinson's symptoms?
When I first took that 3 grams, it hit me so hard I had to sit down. And I have a lot of experience with psychedelics. And it's been a long time since I ate shrooms, but
Mm.
it sat me down. And um, but I found as long as you stay up on your dose, you don't feel any psychedelic effects.
Okay. Are you still for your dosages now? Are you still at that 3 gram mark? Or are you adjusting up or down now?
I've titrated down, and when I did that 3 grams, I would, when I got up, take a leak in the morning, say 5 o'clock, I'd eat another 3 grams and go back to sleep. If not, I couldn't take care of myself. I couldn't clean myself on the toilet.
Mm.
I had to jump in the shower previous, and my legs were very shaky. I was having a hard time walking and standing.
Okay.
Um, and so after 6 months, my source changed. So I had to titrate down to 1.5 grams every 5 hours. And I did that probably about 6, 7 years. And then now I'm down to 1 gram every 5 hours.
Wow. And still finding the same similar type of help with it, similar type of
Um, yeah, absolutely.
wow.
Um, I said it helps my breathing. It's able to control my tremors. You wouldn't even know I have any. Um, and and I could only get 2 or 3 sentences out before I had to ask you what I was saying.
Mm.
Uh, Obviously, I can rattle on for quite a while now. Um, it, and I had such a tremor in my voice that it was hard to understand me.
Yeah.
Um, my I was supposed to send you some pictures. I'll still do that.
Yes.
But it has about 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks before I found these. I was putting conditioner in my hair over the sink. I have real short hair. I opened my eyes, and there were hundreds of hairs, all maybe thousands, all over the sides and the bottoms. I didn't even realize I was losing my hair, but now I think back, yeah, there was a few hairs around there.
Yeah.
But this was unreal. I was shedding, and it happened until I ate those shrooms. And then, sorry about my dog.
Oh, no worries.
Um, and after I ate those shrooms, it stopped falling out, and it came back. With Parkinson's, you have really bad mood swings,
Mm.
and I'm I'm a lot better
Wow.
to be around now.
Yeah. And I'll post the video in our links and in the show notes. But Darren sent me a video. Actually, no, I'm sorry. Leo sent me the video of Darren eating the mushrooms before and after. And so I'll put that link in our video in our show notes so you can see the effects of Darren pre taking mushrooms and 25 minutes after, and you can see the level of management that comes into his body as those medicines start to take hold and the drastic difference. And I can't even imagine, Darren, having to manage the symptoms that you manage. I mean, breathing is second nature to 99% of us, and we don't even realize what it's not like to breathe. I have asthma, so I know what it's like to have labored breathing, but just to stop breathing and be conscious of that, that's got to be terrifying. So I mean, the fact that you could keep yourself in that calm state until you started breathing again and not just lose it is that's amazing in its own right without even the medicines involved. Are you still having problems with managing your breathing, or is that more or less leveled out now?
No, I still have problems with my breathing.
Okay. Yeah.
Um, and yeah,
Yeah. That's a hard symptom to manage, man. And I'm so happy that you found plant medicines to help you manage your symptoms.
yeah.
And being part of the indigenous peoples of this area, do you feel honestly that the indigenous cultures are being honored with now the legalization of cannabis and the potential exploitation of all these plant medicines? Are the indigenous, the BIPOC, are the cultures, are they being honored in this now exploitation of these plant medicines?
Yeah, we're starting to um, get more opportunities. My tribe has a few, but one of the things is for me is psychedelics, and tribes tribes have lost that wisdom of all the natural medicines that were here,
Hmm.
and we're slowly finding them again. And one of them is psychedelic mushrooms. And if you Google, Washington State is one of the strongest. The West Coast is one of the strongest mushroom belts there are.
Wow.
So if we wouldn't have lost their medicine, I would have been using this. So
Hmm.
what I'm hoping to do is, I'm sorry, what was your question?
It was more of a statement. It was more of a just, we're now understanding a lot of this, usages of plant medicines, and it's just there's a lot of the indigenous culture that aren't being recognized for utilizing these plant medicines for a long time, and now that like cannabis, psilocybin, for example, they might have fallen out of regular usage for a lot of indigenous cultures, but since there's a lot of tribal land that isn't being farmed right now that could potentially house a lot of cannabis or house hemp, to help with the tree populations and not using as many trees because hemp is a comparable product and it grows pretty quick, doesn't need and we'll talk about this in a few minutes, but that CO2 rising that we have right now that's mass growing all the trees and into a dangerous rate. Hemp is a very strong growing product that could probably counter a lot of the usages of things like trees for paper, the paper products that we have, clothing. Hemp's clothing is very strong. Hemp oil is very usable. So it's just it's and this is something that Leo brought up last week when we talked, was making sure that the indigenous cultures are being honored for these medicines that they've been utilizing for a long time, and also giving the opportunity for not just rich white people to get into this business, like with what happened with cannabis. That there's an onslaught of just white entrepreneurs that are taking over all this industry that has been utilized by black culture, indigenous cultures, all these different cultures, but now it's so hard for a person of color or an indigenous person to get a license to sell cannabis, which is something that, to be fair, a lot of the population that's in prison right now are people of color, indigenous people that had been, arrested for small amounts of marijuana. I think you were one of them for a while, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So when you were in Spokannabis, trying to help, when you started Spokannabis, trying to help people get marijuana so they could help their cancer symptoms and not have to go the chemical route, you were caught and you were imprisoned, right?
And it's not just cancer. You got MS, Parkinson's, a, a, um, a whole list of different things, a whole array of things that cannabis helps with.
Yeah.
It's, from ALS to brain damage to broken backs and different kinds of things.
Yeah.
And when I got raided, I opened the first dispensary in Eastern Washington in 2003. And I was raided in 2008. I was the only one here for 5 years.
Wow.
They raided me and threw me in jail. It was on a Friday, so I spent the weekend. I got out and they charged me with 7 felonies.
Oh shit.
Um, they, it, I went to court. They came at me with, they'd give me 3 felonies and 6 to 18 months. And I don't know why they gave me that time span. But my memory is shot too. So
No worries.
that months thing might have been either 6 or 18 or somewhere in there.
Yeah.
But I told them, man, I'm not taking that. So they came back to me again a month or two later when I went back up in there, and they said, okay, we're going to give you 1 felony and 2 years probation. I said, man, I'm not taking anything.
Yeah. Right.
So they came back and they threw it out. But they got a chunk of money from me. They said, but we're going to keep your 36 grand. I should have said no. I'd have been able to keep it. But I said, go ahead. And Jeffrey Steinborn over there in Seattle said, man, you should have said no. I would have got it for you if they tried to take your money. But I didn't contact him soon enough
Oh, okay.
to gain some of his wisdom.
Yeah. I bet at that point in time it's just like, just take it. I don't care. Just leave me the F alone.
Yeah, pretty much.
Wow.
Yeah, that was pretty much it.
Wow. Well, so just to get back to the awareness stuff that you're working on, thank you for that story, and I'm so happy to hear that you've made it through that, and that you're still advocating for plant medicines, and you're advocating for even more now, which is the thing that I'm really interested to talk to you about is the awareness that you're bringing to the dangerous amounts of CO2 levels that we have in our atmosphere, which is making the trees grow at accelerated rates, which is also damaging the insect populations.
And if I can, let me get back to where you was talking about the hemp
Yeah, please.
And trees. What is happening with our trees? They're being forced to grow in an accelerated rate. And for them to sustain themselves, they need extra nutrients and water, or there's just not enough for them. They're going to rot their roots out. And that doesn't matter what plant, or it's all vegetation. Hmm. I've got a friend over on the Fort Belknap that works for environmental. They're on the border of Montana and North Dakota. He said the plants are seeding out 4 or 5 weeks early. When that happens, they go dormant. They don't grow that extra 5 weeks or so for the animals to have something to eat. Now, I don't know if it's because of the disappearance of our insects, the elevated levels of CO2, or they're being forced to grow in an accelerated rate and they're burning their roots out. Kind of like somebody that was on steroids. They look like they're doing good, but they're burning themselves out.
Hmm.
So if we don't have extra nutrients in that ground, it doesn't matter what we're going to grow. And so what I'm proposing, my reservation is 1.4 million acres, where right below Canada, the Columbia River uh, is flows right on the shores of my reservation.
Hmm.
We're surrounded by water on three sides.
Wow.
And so what I propose is that we're going to have to. There's a guy out of California that came up with this. I can't remember what they call it, but we take a big, build a big feedlot and put, say, 100 head of cattle in there for 2-3 weeks.
Hmm.
And then we pick up and move the stakes and move the cattle and do that again and till the ground up. And then we'll have enough nutrients in the soil, hopefully,
Ah.
to be able to grow at the accelerated rate they're being forced to grow because of
So instead of trying, well, I mean, eventually, hopefully, we'll try to decrease the amount of CO2 in the atmosphere. I know that the world is working to do that, but how long that's going to take is who knows. So one of the things that you're talking about is instead of, not instead of, but as well as we're working as a planet to decrease the CO2, you're also trying to get more nutrients into the ground to help counteract and give the roots and the trees the nutrients they need to help grow with the amount of CO2 that's currently in the air.
correct.
Okay, gotcha.
And and to tell you the truth, it's too late.
Oh,
And and here's the deal: the reason all this is happening is pre-industrial revolution. We sat at 280 parts per million. We've been registered at 420. That's a increase of 50%.
wow.
So for a million years, it took us to get to 280.
Hmm.
And 260 years ago, we started burning fossil fuels, and it increased it by 50%. If you Google what does elevated levels of CO2 do to vegetation, it's research this. All the experts will say that it forces it to grow at an accelerated rate.
Hmm.
But nothing can grow bigger and faster forever. There's only been one area of people that I've been able to find that is talking the same way I am. And you can read that article by Googling 16 million acres of dead trees. What they're talking about, there's a U.S. Forestry Service out of Idaho did a story with Creme 2 News. That swath runs from Idaho into Montana,
Hmm.
and you can look in there and you can't see anything wrong with it. There's no insects. There's no dead foliage, no dead tops, and more than normal.
Hmm.
Um, and a pro can look in there and not see what's wrong with it.
Hmm.
They're attributing that to an invasive species called blight rust, and they'll tell you that it moves slow. Now, I'm here to say it's impossible for a disease to travel 16 million acres underground, moving at a slow rate,
Hmm.
and not show a rate of decline. That first tree needs to look different, or their hypothesis is incorrect. And the reason those roots look like they're rotten is because they're burning themselves out
Right.
from searching for the nutrients and moisture that's not there.
Hmm. Now you sent me
And
in prep for our interview today, and again I'll put these links in our show notes. But you sent me a bunch of videos of you going around to seemingly healthy trees, whether they're saplings or somewhat established trees, and being able to break a seemingly healthy branch right in half, which in theory should just bend with that because of the amount of water and the amount of sap that's in there. It should just bend with it, but it's breaking. And again, like you said, seemingly healthy, but very, very damaged trees.
and with that, it doesn't matter if it's a conifer or it's a deciduous, and it doesn't matter if it's rural or if it's urban. So urban getting fertilizer. Uh, I went up to a park and I've been watching these trees, and I presented at the Affiliated Tribes of Northwest Indian Conference.
Hmm.
And I went up there and grabbed an example off that, a branch off there. I broke one of the branches off, and this is in a park that here about 2 years ago.
Hmm.
I believe that was in 2018. Well, in about 2, 3 years ago, we, excuse me, we had a windstorm here in Spokane that cost us $3 million.
Oh, wow.
And I went up to that part. Pretty much all those trees were laying down, and they got no roots to them.
Mm.
And if you go look up observed evidence of a changing forest and look at the rest of the videos there I have, I don't know what, either you got to subscribe to it to look at them, or I don't know how that works. But that there's one in there called dry roots or rotten roots, something like that.
Okay.
And what that is, there's a video of me walking up to a green tree, pine tree, green top, and there's pretty much no root ball on it. And I walk over to that, and I mess with that tree, and it sounds like paper, and
Wow.
you can just pull it apart like paper. There's no lateral roots in these trees, on these trees, and like I said, that doesn't matter if they're being watered and fertilized in a park or somebody's yard. Or in a forest. It's happening everywhere.
Wow.
And speaking about lateral roots,
Hmm.
in 2019, the news stations were talking about how many cones were on the ground. So I went out and looked, and my forestry background from working with the Spokane tribe told me that there were more trees that had cones on them than should have been. There were more cones on the trees than should have been. And I've got pictures of them 5 foot tall with cones all over them. Now, these guys know they're dying,
Oh, man.
so they're trying to throw as much seed out there as they can to carry on their species.
Wow.
And so there should have been seedlings all over the place. I didn't see the seedlings myself to the end of July. They could have been there probably before that, but I'm out in the woods probably 5 days a week, if not 6 days a week. And and so I walked up and I grabbed one of those seedlings. And this is also one of the videos on my YouTube page.
Hmm.
And what I pulled up that seedling is about 3 inches tall, and the girth maybe the size of 2 toothpicks,
Hmm.
at the most three. Um, and I pulled that up, and there are no lateral roots, and it goes all the way down to a point. So I'm not breaking it in half or anything. And I can pull them up all day long like that. And so in 2020, I went out and they're the same height, same girth, but now they got a second set of needles on top of them. And I pulled that up, and you can see there's no lateral roots. They go down the point.
Wow.
Last year, I went out there, same height, same girth. Now there's a third set of needles on top of that seedling that's maybe 3 inches tall and maybe two toothpicks together, 3 at the most. And that's one of the videos that you will see me pulling up that third year seedling, and I show the 3 years of growth on there. So there's no new stuff growing out there. And our trees sequester a third of the CO2 we emit every year. So if our trees are as dry and brittle as I say they are, and I'm being published for my observations, then that they are turning from that stays up there, and now they're switching from a carbon sink to a carbon contributor. People are wondering, they're thinking why they're blowing past all their predictions. This is why. Yeah. And people haven't caught on to that yet. And the Intertribal Timber Council published my observations in the largest forestry magazine on the West Coast.
Wow.
It's called the Western Forester. It's extension of the Society of American Foresters, and you can find that article by Googling a lifetime of observations.
Awesome. I'll put that in our show notes also.
Come again?
I said I'll put that in our show notes also. I'll put a link to that in our, yeah.
Far out. And there are 13 federal agencies putting together the next National Climate Assessment, the NCA-5. And the Department of Interior, one of their departments within itself is the Bureau of Indian Affairs.
Beautiful.
The BIA reached out to the Institute of Tribal Environmental Professionals and asked if they'd reach out to Indian country and see if we're seeing things in the environment other people aren't seeing. And they just released that report this last December, and it's called The Status of Tribes and Climate Change. I am honored to be one of the 90 authors that they published in there that are seeing things that nobody else is. I'm currently working with them now for the NCA-5 that'll be out next year.
Wow.
But my observations in that report begin on page 60. I've got a letter from a professor of forestry named Andy Perleyberg at WSU. I'm currently working with Greg Edel, who is a professor of forestry and climate at the University of Washington. He put a multimedia message out that I shared with you that said that any student that wanted to help me with creating a survey online portal, educational materials, and set up a network throughout any country can do their capstone project on that. So whether the students do it or not, he has already he's already said that it's something that is interesting enough to him that they're going to do their capstone. He's going to allow their students to do that.
That's huge, man. That's
Um,
big.
yeah, I got other as well too, but there's four of them there that should, I hope. But I don't have any letters behind my name,
Yeah.
and people tell me, "Well, go to school so you can get a degree and come back, and people will listen to you more." There's no time
Right.
for me to get a degree. And I am, excuse me, but if I am the one teaching the professors
Right. Exactly.
what's going on.
So Darren, I agree with you 100% on that, man. One of the reasons I actually started this podcast was to give people that don't have an alphabet worth of letters after their name, but are still smart as shit and have a lot of good information and knowledge to share, to give them a platform to share that on. And to your point, like, the amount of knowledge you already have, the amount of knowledge that you've gained already, yeah, you would be teaching the class. You wouldn't be, I mean, you definitely could be gaining something, but you're going to be the one teaching the teachers about what's actually going on. So, don't waste your time on that. Just continue on the path that you're on. You're already making waves and getting this information out
Right.
there, and that's so beautiful. I guess my question to you would be, for me as like just a common person, right? Or the regular, householder or just human being in the world. How do we help this? What's our part? How can we help either raise awareness or help with the over CO2 in the air, or just, what's our part that we can do to help out?
Is it okay if I shared with you the examples that I have been able to discover that they're talking about? Would
Yeah.
it be okay if I answered that afterwards?
Yeah, most definitely, please.
All right, far out. In 2014,
Hmm.
I noticed the tips of the branches were going up and reaching for the sun. And so I went over and I grabbed a pine needle and I pulled it apart, and I pulled apart way too easy
Yeah.
for the experience I have is a child back home on the res playing with pine needles and different things. So I grabbed 8 of them
Hmm.
and I put them into a bunch, and I was able to pull that whole bunch a quarter-inch piece from one end to the other.
Hmm.
And then I scraped up a pile of needles with my hands, dead needles that were on the ground, and I put them between my hand and I scrunched them and I turned them to powder. Now, this is something they couldn't teach you in, even take that test or understand what it means once I gave them that information.
Yeah.
And what that means to me is Indian country has been, Turtle Islanders
Hmm.
have been weaving with pine needles forever, and one needle at a time.
Hmm.
If I can pull 8 of them apart that effortlessly, a person wouldn't have been able to weave with just one.
Right.
And and if I can turn them to powder when they dry, a person wouldn't have made mats and bowls and different things like that
Hmm.
out of them.
Yeah.
And that's knowledge you're not going to learn in school. And that's two. I can see 7 things wrong with the pine needles. And nobody that I've talked to, and I've talked to a lot of people within the tribes, within the state government, within the federal government, within the city government, uh, parks, all those guys. And I can't get anybody to see what I'm seeing.
Hmm.
So they do after I show them, they can see it,
Right.
but I don't know why the inaction. And people are agreeing that climate change is real, and they're seeing that it's happening exactly real fast. But people are arguing about if it's real. The people that believe it need to start preparing for it.
Yeah.
It's coming, and I don't see anybody preparing for it. But the other things on that. The third thing
Mm-hmm.
on those pine needles is they're supposed to be forest green. Our conifers, you go look at any of them, are they're a lot darker. They're supposed to be forest green. And right now they're a real light green and maybe a gray green, um, and they're real dull looking. And I believe they're losing the tint because they're dying.
Yeah.
And and um, the other thing is that cuticle. It's that waxy substance that goes over leaves and needles that holds in the moisture and reflects the sunlight.
Mm-hmm.
That's four. And how do I know that? I'm not. I don't have a lab to be able to test that, and I never have tested it. But but for me, I look at it this way: if I'm able to pull 8 of those pine needles apart, and I can turn them to powder when they dry, then there's a pretty good chance that um, that cuticle is missing.
Right.
And so that's 4.
Hmm.
One of them is branches. Pine needles are supposed to come on in little packs throughout the branch.
Okay.
Not anymore. Now they come on in a circumference around the end of the branch. When I first saw this, it reminded me of a chimney brush. But now that all the branches are reaching for the sky, I've got an example, and this is the fifth one.
Okay.
At that branch that I busted off for the ATNI's conference up at that park has 6 sections of those pine needles at the end. And what that means to me is that pine trees shed their pine needles every 2 to 3 years. So if there's that many on there, there's at least 2, maybe more, maybe 2 or maybe more times the foliage that should be on those branches.
Hmm.
And so that's why it's so smoky. And so that is, I think that was the 6th one.
Mm-hmm.
And the 7th one is the way I know how to understand these pine needles so much is there's a plant called smokichin, is what our people called it forever.
Okay.
And I believe it's the European name is called balsam root.
Okay.
And they look like miniature sunflowers. They grow in a bunch. And when those things bloom, they bloom everywhere at the same time. And I've been seeing great big areas where it's all bloomed out just over the hill, say 100 yards or better. It's still coming up out of the ground. And then I see other great big areas that not even one flower in there at all. Now, what you do is you eat those before they bloom, and you you take that top off and you peel it, and it's like a cucumber.
Oh.
Now, when I was real small,
Mm-hmm.
and learning this with my grandma, who is a full-blood Spokane, and my mom, who is half Spokane and half Caldwell.
Hmm.
And I would sit on the hills in the springtime, and we would pick those and eat them. And because of my shaky hands, my mom was always peeling them for me.
Hmm.
And when she get tired, she'd her and my grandma say, "Here, play with these." And she taught me how to play with pine needles and different things.
Yeah.
And one of the things I can do, I can make a chain, shoot as long as I want, out of pine needles.
Yeah.
And how I did that was our pine needles have 3 needles in that little I can't remember that little sheath at the end.
Okay.
And you pull 2 of those needles out and you bend that one over and you stick it back in that sheath. And then you can make your chain that way.
Ah.
And um, and so that they've been changing over and over and over the different ways and or and as a progression type deal, and they progressed now till last year that sheath was completely gone, nothing holding those needles together.
Wow.
So there's nothing we can do. And it doesn't matter how many trees we plant or anything else, we're being forced to grow at an accelerated rate.
All right.
And our vegetation can't keep up with that. And so that's where food is going to be scarce.
Yeah. Do you think that's one of the
Uh,
reasons why the wildfires are getting so bad right now, especially down the West Coast, because of
uh,
the lack of nutrients in the trees? They're just going up like kindling instead of actually being able to hold on to their moisture.
that's exactly why.
Okay.
It's I've got a video on my uh, page there
Hmm.
that I walk up to a 15-foot tall pine tree and bend it over, and it looks like there's nothing wrong with it. And I snap it in half. I've got videos of me out here grabbing my cherry branch off one of my trees
Hmm.
and say it's bigger than the size of a quarter, maybe between a half and a quarter, somewhere in there. And it's 4 feet long or something. And I grab that, and it's healthy, big green leaves all over.
Hmm.
And I grab that and I bust it with my hands about every 6 to 8 inches.
Yeah, I remember watching that
And
video. That was alarming watching you do that. That was very alarming watching that happen.
yeah, and that's in my yard where I give it plenty of moisture. So again, it doesn't matter
Yeah.
if we're going to give it that or not.
Hmm.
Um, we're done
Yeah.
as far as the trees.
Okay. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
'cause it sounds like, I mean, to be honest, there sounds like a little bit of despair in your voice. Like we've kind of lost our chance to make this right. Is that kind of where you think we're at, or do you think there is a turning point?
oh no, that's a fact.
Yeah.
I can go out to any branch on any tree out there and bend that and snap that. It won't even bend it, just snap.
Yeah.
And for anybody out there that is skeptical about this, and yeah, I do believe that this will mitigate the damages if we hurry up. And for anybody that's skeptical out there, I'm going to ask you to look at a deciduous tree, one with leaves on it. I'm going to give you a second here to go find that. And I'm going to show you how that's growing in an accelerated rate,
Okay.
how the structure of our trees have changed. And we'll never be able to change the structure back. When you're looking at that tree, notice how wide it is.
Hmm.
And now look at the branches. You see all the branches reaching for the sky?
Yeah.
If that tree always did that, the branches reach for the sky, it would have never got as wide as it did. So I grew marijuana with elevated levels of CO2 for over 5 years. and I would cut my, I would go down, find the 5 solid branches on my plant, cut the top off. I would fold those back. New ones would come up from that, going straight up. I'd fold those back, and new ones. I had a plant one time that had 36 tops on it
Holy shit.
because they're all reaching for the sky. And but for those branches on those trees, just on the pine trees alone,
Mm-hmm.
there's 3 things wrong with the branches. The first one, the brittle. I can go over and grab them and just snap them. They can be a silver dollar size,
Wow.
and I'll snap them. And the second thing is, back when I first saw this, they reminded me of a chimney brush.
Mm.
But now that all the branches are reaching for the sky, it reminds me more of a bottle brush.
Mm.
And there's your second one. And the third one is that pine trees, the reason they're so fire resistant is because they have thick bark, and they shed their bottom branches. So I can see those tall trees, and there's no branches below it. They've shedded them.
Mm-hmm.
And if you go out there and look, those trees are dying so fast they don't have time to shed their bottom branches. And that bark is loose. So when you get a fire in there, it's going to crawl right up those branches, those dead branches, and that all that dead bark and needles that are piled up around those trees. And then it's going to start climbing those. The extra foliage is going to make them burn hotter. The branches all reaching for the sky are going to make them crown. And what crowning means is, in a forest fire, when a tree reaches the top, a fire reaches the top, and it jumps from top to top, that's called crowning.
Gotcha.
And the way that these trees are all, the structure is changed in them all, that's what's happening. And there's just no. I saw a picture of a fire on my res. I bet the ground was burning about over a foot, maybe 18 inches better, was all on fire. And that's because those needles don't have that waxy coating on them to kind of give them that fire resistant. So there, you imagine a bottle brush of needles that are bone dry and the branches heading for the sky.
Yeah.
You can't put that fire out.
Yeah. Wow. That's alarming. That's very alarming, man. So, what are your? So I know you're bringing a lot of awareness to this, but what are your next steps for this awareness? I know you're working with a bunch of different groups to help with the information that's being shared, but for your personal journey with this, where are you taking this next?
I was published, and I'm recognized about my trees. So I have to move on to the next thing. And the next thing is, in 2019, I was in a Walmart parking lot, and I looked up at the parking lot light, and there were no insects. I came back to my house. I looked all over different places. I called all over, no insects. A buddy of mine that's a truck driver, I had him take pictures from night lights from Pennsylvania, Missouri, Michigan, Alabama, all the way across the country, Texas, up into Canada and other countries, no insects.
Wow.
Now we got entomologists that are walking in and out of their house every day, and they're not seeing that. So I believe again, Christ is opening my eyes. And to support what I'm claiming there, a newspaper here in Eastern Washington, the biggest newspaper, went out to try to prove me wrong,
Okay.
tried to refute my observations. But being my observations are irrefutable,
Mm-hmm.
they published them instead.
Wow.
And you can find that article if you Google the bottom as it just dropped out. Now, to lend a little support to what I'm talking about,
Mm-hmm.
the May 2020 issue of National Geographic, May 2020 issue of National Geographic.
Mm-hmm.
There's a bunch of insects on the cover. Caption says you're going to miss these. And the article states we lost 70% of our insects from 1990 to 2016.
Holy shit.
That's 6 years before I noticed them gone around the nightlights.
Yeah.
I got maybe 2 or 3 mosquitoes last year, bites. They're usually filthy. How about your houses now, guys? Take a look at your houses. How you doing with spiders? You see many spiders in your house this winter, this coming up to spring? It's a frog in a pot of water.
Right.
Everything is happening so slow around us that people aren't noticing. You asked me what I want to do now
Mm-hmm.
with this, and I'm not done pushing I'm not done talking about the trees
Good.
or the insects. I'm still bringing that awareness. But my reservation is 1.4 million acres in eastern Washington state.
Mm-hmm.
We're one of the largest timber tribes in the nation. What I'm saying is that our birds feed their young, and 90% of their diet is insects. So if that's not, we've already lost like 2/3 of our birds.
Wow.
Around the world, and this is happening everywhere around the world at the same time. And so if we don't hurry up and get those insects out there, we can't just be saying it's real or not. Just like the insects, you need to prepare. And you prepare. Here's what I've got nobody helping me with these ideas. So here's one that I am going to try to. Well, I'm already trying to talk I brought it up to several people.
Mm-hmm.
My tribe put me on the front page of our tribal newspaper 3 times, supporting what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
But I just can't get the administration to move on it. You guys know how politicians are.
Right.
They know difference on the rest. But what I'm proposing is that we start bug farms, and we should have had those a long time ago. And what we need to do is start releasing mass insects into our forests and different places. And right now, hopefully they'll hatch some babies out while they're out there.
Mm-hmm.
And then we build some kind of bug farm to support them when the plants are going dormant 4 or 5 weeks early, right, and whatnot, what have you. And our moths pollinate them as much as the bees do.
Mm-hmm.
So guys, this is it.
This is it. What kind of bugs are, what is there a specific kind of bug that you're focusing on for the bug farm, or is it just insects in general?
I haven't I haven't researched any of that. I
Okay.
just came up with that idea a few weeks ago, and I got so many other things I'm working. I've got 4 major things I'm working on right now, and so that um, I don't know what kind of insects, but tribes are very meticulous uh, on taking notes
Hmm.
of what's going on with fish count, with birds, insects, trees, or whatever.
Yeah.
And so I think that they will have the wisdom that we need to ascertain to save our ecological environment.
Yeah.
And I believe that they will know what type of insects they need in those certain areas, and we'll go from there.
Yeah. Okay. Well, man, you're doing some big work, brother. You're bringing awareness. You're finding things out that people aren't even looking for yet, man. I'm so happy that you're doing what you're doing. I know it seems kind of kind of like disparaging at times. I would imagine, seeing this much, depletion of our resources. But somebody's got to bring awareness to it, man. And not to know what we're going to do with this information yet, but I appreciate you bringing that awareness to us. Um,
It,
Sorry, go ahead.
it, it's lame. Every time I walk out of my house, I can see what I'm talking about
Yeah.
and more.
Yeah. That's got to be hard on the heart, man. Just to just see it happening all the way around you, and luckily people are starting to listen now. We're not know if we can do anything to save it, but we're in the path of listening, and hopefully we can figure out something to counteract what we've been witnessing now, whether we realize it or not.
Yeah, I'm very helpful being published in those, and I'm working with the people putting the NCA 5 together next year, the National Climate Assessment, for my observations to be included in there.
Beautiful. Well, I hope they are, man. Is there something that we as listeners can do to help your cause? Is there awareness that we can help bring to light, or is it support that we can offer for the information that's coming up?
I don't know yet.
Okay.
I like say I'm just one person. If I could get some people together, maybe I could figure something out. But I right now get a hold of the politicians.
Okay.
I can't get a hold of the people that get a hold of the foresters and the people that are head of the parks and these anywhere that you will see that somebody might be watching, if not watching, they have it all around them. You could open people in the park's eyes and what have you.
Hmm.
And again, guys, excuse me. Then here's the last thing. I I believe Indian country isn't getting our due um, respect
Hmm.
because I feel we lost our identity, because we lost our home. We got different tribes, so we have our identity as tribes,
Hmm.
but not as a people. You got people in Canada that are First Nations, of people down here that are Indians,
Hmm.
Native Americans, and people have used those terms in a derogatory way
Yeah.
for a long time. We have people on each side of the border referring to ourselves as different people. The name Indian is already used,
Hmm.
and the term Native American is anybody from America. So how are we going to claim our identity as a people?
Yeah.
Well, we lost all our land, and we was mistreated like we did, and we're still suffering the generational trauma. But one of the things that um, that could be maybe try to make up for some of the damage that was caused,
Hmm.
is allow us to unite again. We wouldn't have, back in the day, this continent, before the European, anybody else got here, was referred to as Turtle Island.
Hmm.
And it moves like a turtle,
Yeah.
slow. And um, and with that, if we were able to get our identity back, as far as the name of our country is, um, would be we would be referred to as Turtle Islanders.
Hmm.
Wouldn't be Indians, wouldn't be Native Americans, wouldn't be First Nations. We'd be Turtle Island
Hmm.
from top to bottom. And I feel that that will bring us unity and help with the healing that uh, 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 to the devastation that was inflicted upon the people.
Yeah.
My my grandma, like I said, is full blood Spokane,
Hmm.
and I think her enrollment number is like 850 within the tribe, something like that. But if you look back at her parents,
Hmm.
my great grandma, her name was Squinchina. I don't remember my grandpa Jackson's real name, but they gave him the name Jackson Alexander. And my grandma Squinchina, they changed her name to Elizabeth.
Hmm.
And you can see they're not even an enrollment number. That's when the tribe just got started. So I've got a little bit of knowledge of the indigenous ways.
Yeah, most definitely, man. I love that idea of uniting the whole continent as Turtle Islanders instead of, us colonizing the name and saying we're going to call it this. We're going to call you this entire race of people. We're going to call y'all this. It's like that's not even right. The Turtle Islanders. I love that and I support that 100%, brother. Is that an idea that you're just now getting off the ground to get momentum behind, or is there somewhere our
Uh,
listeners can go to kind of help, raise awareness for that?
Not yet.
Okay.
I'll let you know, and maybe you can let them know later. But I called a tribe down in California, and they were hip on it.
Mm.
And I called Autumn Peltier. You guys know um, about Greta,
Uh-huh.
who is
Yep.
a climate warrior.
Damn straight.
Uh, well, there's an Indian girl, a Turtle Islander
Uh-huh.
up in Canada, named Autumn Peltier.
Okay.
There's a tribe up there, the richest tribe up there in Quebec of all of Canada. And I talked to them about the insects in the trees. And I mentioned about Turtle Island, and they were very receptive as well.
Beautiful.
We've our people are bringing back the canoes
Mm.
and a cedar made out of red cedar, and different things. It
Beautiful.
depends on where you're at, I guess.
Yeah.
And they're coming down from Canada. They're all over the place. So that's we're right in step.
Mm.
And so we're going to put some T-shirts and whatnot together and be posted up at some powwows this year, trying to get some names on the back of these Turtle Islanders. So I would like to just be able to give these shirts away
Mm.
to kind of promote it and get other swag to give away.
Mm-hmm.
But Deb Holland right now, I just saw a couple of days ago that she put a press release out. I can't remember if it's 300 or 600. It's my memory is still bad.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and but she is going to change. It's already set in motion. She's changing over 300, 600 names that are offensive to Turtle Islanders, like squaw
Mm,
and different things like that.
that's beautiful. Somebody's got to bring that awareness up and start making those changes. I think that's
Exactly.
it's a great step in the right direction. We're doing it with the Confederate statues in the South. We need to start doing it with all the different derogatory names that we don't even realize we're using anymore. We got to get in front of this stuff.
That's right.
Damn straight, brother. Well, man, you are one fantastic human being, brother. I appreciate all the work that you're doing, the awareness that you're bringing, the from plant medicines to the trees to bugs to Turtle Island. I mean, you're doing so much stuff right now, brother. I really appreciate you being the human that you are and utilizing those gifts to really bring awareness to everybody about the things that you notice. And that's what I think. That's one of the most beautiful things about humanity. We're all built so differently, so uniquely, that you're going to see something and that's going to resonate with you that might not resonate with me. And you having the wherewithal to bring that awareness to us, that's how we create that movement. And so, brother, if it wasn't for you, we wouldn't be doing this right now. I appreciate you.
Far out. It's been an honor to be your guest.
Thank you, brother. And I will reach out soon. And again, I'll put some links in the show notes for anybody that can help out Darren, whether it's the UW program to volunteer for the capstone, maybe some investment to help get the swag out there so we can increase the awareness for Turtle Island or whatever that is. Darren, thank you again, brother. I look forward to talking with you again, my friend.
Likewise, thank you to all your guests, and I wish you all the best.
Thank you, brother.
Peace.
Thank you so much for spending time with Darren and I. Check out the show notes if you have any questions, want to see some of the links we talked about. And please subscribe, comment, or like the show. And thank you so much. We'll see you next time. Obeisance and love.